All right, so Claude Fable 5 just hit 80.3% on SWE Bench Pro, and Claude Opus 4.8 is sitting at 69.2% on the same leaderboard. That's an 11-point gap, and it's the biggest verified difference between these two models. Both models dropped recently, and if you're paying for API access right now, picking the wrong one could cost you real money. I'm comparing Claude Fable 5 versus Claude Opus 4.8 across 4 real tests using verified sources with no vendor money involved. What I didn't expect going in, the cheaper model might actually be the smarter production choice for most teams, even though it loses on raw capability. The answer probably isn't what you're thinking. So who is this comparison actually for? If you're a developer running agent loops, a team lead choosing an API tier, or someone paying out of pocket for a writing tool, this decision compounds fast. Fable 5 is exactly 2 times the price of Opus 4.8 at every single tier. And that math adds up quickly once you're literally hammering it with requests. Test 1 long context reasoning and agentic coding. Picture a model running 96 parallel agents, and it starts hallucinating function calls halfway through a real code base. That's not a hypothetical, that's what bad agentic coding performance actually looks like in production. And a model that fails here doesn't just produce wrong code, it produces confidently wrong code at scale. I pulled the Coursive leaderboard where both models ran the same benchmarks. Fable 5 hit 80.3% on Subway Bench Pro. Opus 4.8 hit 69.2%. On Frontier Code Diamond, Fable 5 scored 29.3% and Opus 4.8 scored 13.4%, which is more than double. There's no published Fable 5 figure for the GraphVox 1 million token retrieval test, so Opus 4.8's 68.1% F1 there stands alone. Okay, so before we call this, the picture isn't totally clean. Opus 4.8 has a 68.1% F1 on GraphVox at 1 million tokens, and Anthropic hasn't published an equivalent Fable 5 number for that specific test. So on pure long context retrieval, we honestly can't say Fable 5 wins. The agentic coding gap is real, but the long context retrieval side is kind of a coin flip with partial data. Fable 5 takes test 1. I was expecting maybe a 5 or 6 point spread on SWE Bench, but an 11-point lead and more than double on Frontier Code Diamond is way harder to explain away as noise. That puts Fable 5 up 1-0, and the coding advantage alone is pretty hard to argue with. Test 2, creative writing output quality. A failure mode people don't talk about enough. You pay for a model, give it a brief, and it hands back exactly what you asked for and nothing more. No surprise angle, no voice, just technically correct and completely flat. And that's a real cost if you're using AI for content work and you're still rewriting everything from scratch. Anyway, what surprised me here was how clean the result was. Norin, an independent writing tool, ran a 64 output genre test, and Fable 5 beat Opus 4.8 in every single genre, both raw and with a writing profile. Community hands-on reports describe Opus 4.8 as more precise but less proactively creative, which lines up with the test data, though this is one testing methodology from one source, so take it with a grain of salt. Now, honestly, the gap here depends a lot on how you use these models. Opus 4.8 is actually described as better at carrying context and style direction across a long session, which is a real advantage for editors working on big projects. And Norin's own note is that a structured voice profile matters more than the model you pick. So if you've got a solid writing profile set up, Opus 4.8 might close the gap considerably. Fable 5 takes test 2 as well. I was kind of expecting Opus 4.8 to at least win a genre or two, but it didn't, and that's pretty telling. Fable 5 is just generating stronger raw drafts across the board. So that puts us at 2 for Fable 5, 0 for Opus 4.8, and the creative gap is real even if it shrinks once you've got a good writing profile. Test 3, API response latency. So you've built an interactive tool, a user types a question, and they sit there for almost 2 minutes before anything comes back. That's a person staring at a spinner, and slow first token time in interactive workflows is a product quality problem that makes people stop using your tool entirely. I pulled artificial analysis data from June 11, 2026. Same testing setup for both models on the Anthropic API. Fable 5, time to first token at max effort, 109 seconds. Opus 4.8, 60.9 seconds. That's nearly 1.8 times faster to start responding. Once thinking is done, Fable 5 actually edges it at 63.4 tokens per second versus 59.8, but that 6% output speed difference is basically nothing compared to the first token gap. Opus 4.8 takes test 3, and honestly, this one surprised me more than I expected. I figured Fable 5 would be a bit slower, but a 109-second wait versus 60.9 seconds is something you actually feel, not just a benchmark stat. Opus 4.8 also has a fast mode running at about 2.5 times standard speed, which Fable 5 simply doesn't offer. So that's 2 for Fable 5, 1 for Opus 4.8. Test 4, cost per million tokens. One developer running 96 parallel Fable 5 agents burned 4.4 million tokens in under an hour, And community reports put that at $200 to $400 per hour in agent loops. That's not a pricing footnote. That's a budget conversation you need to have before you ship anything to production. I was expecting a pricing gap, but the numbers are really, really clean here. Fable 5 is $10 input and $50 output per million tokens. Opus 4.8 is $5 input and $25 output. Exactly half at every tier with no exceptions. On batch, Opus 4.8 drops to $2.50 input and $12.50 output, while Fable 5 batch is still $5.25. And Opus 4.8 supports zero data retention, which Fable 5 flat out cannot do due to mandatory 30-day retention. Now, the per token rate is only part of the story. If Fable 5 solves a problem in fewer calls because it's smarter, the real cost gap might be smaller than the 2 times headline suggests. We don't have a controlled same task cost comparison for agent loops from a neutral source, so the $200 to $400 per hour figure is community reported, and you should take that specific number with a grain of salt. Opus 4.8 takes test 4, and it's not close. I was expecting maybe a 30 or 40% pricing difference, but half the price at every single tier is a really hard number to argue with, and the zero data retention support for regulated industries is a complete blocker for Fable 5 in those workflows. That ties it up, 2 for Fable 5 and 2 for Opus 4.8. Where does Fable 5 clearly win? Agentic coding, full stop, that 80.3% versus 69.2% on SWE Bench Pro is an 11-point lead. And on Frontier Code Diamond, it's 29.3% versus 13.4%, more than double. Raw creative output, it beat Opus 4.8 in every genre across 64 outputs. And once its thinking is done, it outputs at 63.4 tokens per second, a small but real edge for long-form generation. And where does Opus 4.8 clearly win? Price, $5 input and $25 output versus $10 and $50. Exactly half at every tier, and the gap compounds fast at scale. Time to first token, 60.9 seconds versus 109 seconds, nearly 2 times faster in interactive use. Zero data retention support, which Fable 5 can't offer due to mandatory 30-day retention. And fast mode at roughly 2.5 times standard speed, a control lever Fable 5 simply doesn't have. Honestly, I went in expecting Fable 5 to run away with this, and it kind of didn't. So here's the decision rule. If you need frontier agentic coding performance or the strongest raw creative output, and cost isn't a constraint, Fable 5 is your pick. If you're running high volume production workflows, need zero data retention for compliance, or just want a smarter unit economics, Opus 4.8 is the call.